What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and today is one of the most requested episodes of Versus ever. Pretty much every video I've made over the past few weeks, this video has been requested. So today we are going to be looking at the R70 Ajax, one of the new DLC weapons, which is a 3D printing LMG, versus an old favorite, the Dingo, another LMG. So these are actually going to be an incredibly good comparison because of their incredibly similar damage profiles, as we're going to find out very shortly. And by the way, guys, I'd just like to thank you guys for all the support lately. The Versus series has been one of the favorite series throughout all of Black Ops 3, but recently has not been. It's actually been a couple of other series that have been getting more views, more likes than this series. So all I say is if you want to see more Versus series and you enjoy this series, it'd be fantastic if you'd leave a like rating. The more likes these videos get, the more likely I am to make more of them. So if you enjoy this series, that's the way to show me. Now, out of the new weapons, the R70 Ajax is actually my favorite new DLC weapon, so it's going to be really interesting comparing it against one of my old favorite LMGs. So let's get into it and start comparing these stats. So as always, we're going to start off with damage profiles. It's always the first stat we look at in the Versus series, and for these two weapons, as far as LMGs goes, you're always going to be looking at two damage profiles, one at short, medium, and long range, and then at extremely long range, that damage is going to drop off. So for example, for the Dingo, it's 30 damage and then 22 damage, and that drop off takes place at 125 meters. Whereas the R70 Ajax has 30 and 24 damage, which in the sense is the exact same damage profile as the Dingo, because for both weapons it's going to be a 4-bullet kill and then drop off to a 5-bullet kill. But the difference is the R70 Ajax has a longer drop-off range. It's going to drop off at 187.5 meters instead of 125 meters. So you're going to be dealing 30 damage for about 50 extra meters, and that is incredibly important. So for that, we are going to give the R70 Ajax plus 1 point for having a bit better of a damage profile because it's going to deal that 30 damage for 50 extra meters. So plus 1 point for the Ajax. So the next stat we're going to be looking at, like always, is the fire rate, and the fire rate for this R70 Ajax is 652 RPM, which is actually pretty decent for an LMG. As a comparison, the BRM's is 517, and the Gorgon is incredibly slow at 327, whereas the Dingo's, when we look at that, its fire rate is 722 RPM. So as a comparison, that's about 70 RPM higher than the R70 Ajax. So because of that, the 70 RPM faster fire rate for the Dingo, it is going to get plus 1 point and tie things up here. So since we know the damage profile and the fire rate now, we can now look at the time to kill. So the way this is going to work is the Dingo is going to have a better time to kill up until 125 meters, and then 125 meters till 187.5 meters. The R70 Ajax will have a better time to kill. The thing is, though, is you are almost never, ever going to be getting in a gunfight over 125 meters, which means that for almost every gunfight you're going to get into, the Dingo is going to have a better time to kill, except at extremely long range. So for that, we're going to give the Dingo plus 1 point because it's going to have a better time to kill up until 125 meters, which is where 98% of your gunfights will be with both of these weapons. The next thing we're going to look at here is magazine size, and magazine size is a little weird for the R70 Ajax. So it has a 50 round magazine size. However, the way this weapon works is it 3D prints ammo, and not into reserve ammo directly into the magazine. You only get one magazine, and for it, it's going to be ever expanding. So you shoot 15 bullets will be printed back into the magazine, which means there is no maximum magazine size, even though there is at 50. It's really weird and really hard to compare, but the Dingo's magazine size is 80, and normally I think I'd give the points out to the R70 Ajax here because it's going to get bigger and bigger every time you shoot bullets. You're just going to get more and more bullets in there. However, a 30 round magazine size difference is a really big deal, especially when there isn't a massive difference in their fire rates at 70 RPM. So you're going to go through bullets faster with the Dingo, but not that much faster. I think it's just incredibly important to have that 30 rounds extra in your magazine. It's a little bit better than bullets just being printed in there, and on top of that, it's just going to be more consistent because every time you reload, you're going to be able to know exactly how many bullets are going to be in that magazine, whereas for the Ajax, you're just kind of hoping by the time you get in the next fight, you'll have a full magazine. So we're going to give the points out there for the Dingo. That gives it plus 1 point, and it's extending its lead to a pretty damn large lead here. So the one thing I don't totally know about this weapon yet is I don't know if it's a good thing that you can't reload or a bad thing, because what this does is it doesn't waste any of your time. You're not going to have to hide somewhere, especially with an LMG that has an incredibly long reload time, and wait for the weapon to reload. You can just switch to that sidearm and wait for your bullets to print in that weapon. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, so that's why I gave the points out for the Dingo for the magazine size. However, an area that I'm not going to give out points to the Dingo is the reload speed. So the reload speed for the Dingo is 6.75 seconds. Whether there is bullets still in the magazine or it's empty, it doesn't matter. Whereas for the R70 Ajax, you just never have to reload this weapon. Bullets print directly into your magazine. What this means is two things. It's great because you're never going to have to reload it. You don't have to wait for it. However, if you run out of bullets, you're out of bullets. You can't reload, which means this is a class that you really want to be using a sidearm with. Whether it's the RK5 or a Marshall, you just want to have something there in case you do run out of ammo. But we're going to give out the points for the R70 Ajax on this one, simply because you're never going to have to wait to reload this weapon. So the thing with LMGs is they have a lot of stats throughout the LMG class that are incredibly similar. One of which is the weapon switch time, so you can switch from your LMG to a weapon with every single LMG in 0.55 seconds. Another stat that's similar on almost all LMGs is the sprint out time. The sprint out time on almost every LMG is 0.3 seconds, which is actually not that bad. However, the only one that's worse than that is the 48 Dredge at 0.4 seconds, but the rest are the same. Also, the idle sway on every single LMG is extremely, extremely low. Actually, lower than a lot of assault rifles, lower than every SMG. It has super, super low idle sway, which makes aiming with these weapons a lot easier. Now, those are all the stats that are the same with these weapons. However, we can get to some more that are different, one of which is the aim down sights time. So the aim down sights time for the R70 Ajax is 0.35 seconds, which isn't horrible, but it's a little bit slow. Whereas for the Dingo, you're looking at 0.333 seconds, which is a little bit better, and in fact, that is the best in class. So since the Dingo has a better aim down sights time, we are going to give it +1 point, and it extends its lead once again. So the final stat we have to look at is the hip spread. Now, the hip spread on the R70 Ajax is incredibly average. It has a 5-inch at a minimum and 8.5 at a max. That's exactly the same as the BRM and the 48 Dredge, so incredibly average for the class, whereas the Dingo actually has an amazing hip spread. So the hip spread for the Dingo is 4 inches at a minimum and 6 at a maximum. This is actually very, very comparable to assault rifles. So this weapon is almost the same as spray and praying with an assault rifle, even though it's an LMG, which is absolutely insane. And in fact, the hip spread on the Dingo is actually one of the best stats. But obviously that is much, much better on the Dingo. The Dingo gets +1 point and is very clearly the winner of this week's Versus episode. So the one thing I want to say before this episode is over is that both of these weapons are two of the best weapons in the game in hardcore. The fact that both of them deal 30 damage across the entire map, or at least close enough to across the entire map, means you're always going to be looking at a 1-bullet kill in hardcore, unless you're shooting through a wall or unless they are actually across the entire map. So these two weapons kill incredibly, incredibly quick in hardcore, making them some of the best weapons in the game in hardcore. So if you're a hardcore player, these are both weapons you want to give a shot. Obviously, the Dingo is going to be a little bit better because of its stats like we talked about today. However, both of them are incredibly, incredibly good in hardcore. But as I said earlier, the Dingo is 100% the better weapon this week. It is the winner of this week's episode of Versus. But guys, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, it would be fantastic if you could leave a like rating. Also, let me know down in the comment section below what are some future Versus episodes you would like to see, whether they be attachments, perks, or weapons. You can always let me know down in the comment section below. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for watching. You can check out my Twitch, Twitter, and second channel down in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, guys, peace out.